Hi, I'm Jean Nolte, editor at Fons & Porter.
And I'm Colleen Tauke, the sewing specialist at Fons & Porter. In this tutorial, we will show you how to create the stitch and slice zigzag quilt.
For the pattern for this quilt, go to shopfonsandporter.com/quiltingquickly. This is a fun quilt. A lot of people have heard of the race quilt.
Oh, yes.
Which just takes a package of 2.5-inch strips and you just sew them end to end and make a quilt in no time. This is just a little bit of twist on that. So we are going to actually make a quilt very similar to the race quilt, and it is using 40 strips, but it also has some white squares. So we're going to sew it together with a strip and a square and a strip. And the first thing you do, just like in the race quilt, is cut your first strip in half, set the half aside, and just use a half strip, then a white square.
Just start linking them now.
Full strip, white square, another full strip, ready for a white square, until you've used all your strips.
It's going to be a really long one piece. It seems a little bit hard to manage at first. Ignore it. It's going to get shorter real quick.
So the next thing you're going to do, mine's a little shorter than yours will be, but you put the two ends together. Don't worry if it's twisted or not. Just put them together.
Right sides together.
Right sides together. You're going to sew a 1/4-inch seam the entire length of the strip. So you just keep putting right sides together, and when you get to the end, oops, I got a twist. Not a problem. You're going to take scissors, and I'm just going to cut that.
Literally just splice it.
So then you finish sewing. Okay, it didn't come out quite even, but that's okay. So now you have 2 strips. Now, do you press or do you press all at the end?
I've always been taught press as you go. It makes it so much more manageable in the long run. If you have to go back and try to manage every one of those seams at the ironing board, you won't have much fun. So go to the ironing board at this point, set the seam, and press the seam allowances to one side.
So now you have a strip that's too wide. And what you're going to do then is put the ends together again, sew down to the end, cut it, press it if you want or not. Keep doing that until you finally have 2 sets of 16 strips that you put together, and you have one quilt that's going to look like this, or your quilt top is going to look pretty much like this. And it's going to be 32 rows long.
I told you the strips will get short fast.
And it looks like that. Now, we have straightened up the sides of this.
Right. You want to go in, because you're using a scissors to cut the strips at the fold, you're going to want to go in, lay this out, get a nice straight line along each side, measure across the width of the quilt, figure out what you can straighten it to, and make it nice and square.
Okay. Now, we're going to go get ready for the next step, and we'll be right back. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is take that whole top and fan fold it so that it's in groups of 4 rows. So you see it's folded right sides together and then folded back on itself, just like you made paper fans when you were a kid.
Exactly.
Okay, so there will be 8 layers here and 4 rows wide. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is a little bit scary, but that's what makes it a little different than the race quilt. We're going to get rid of this great big one and bring in a smaller.
We decided that a smaller version might be easier for you to see.
All right, so you've marked this.
Okay. We measured over 3 inches from one edge and made a mark, and measured 11 inches over from the other
So this would be the top edge of the quilt, and there would be several more layers under here, but we don't have all those. So this would be the top edge up here. So you can either just make dots and then use your ruler to cut, or you can actually draw the line if you want to. So now I'm going to put the ruler along the line that we drew and actually cut that quilt.
Now, make sure that you have a really sharp blade in your rotary,
because that's going to be 8 layers.
So maybe this is the time to put in that new blade you've been putting off.
And you know, I find that when you're cutting like that, I use the big 60mm rotary cutter. It works better for me if you have one of those. This is the 45 and it works fine, but the bigger one makes it even a little bit easier.
But by making just that diagonal cut, you've now created a chevron or zigzag.
Okay, and you
This
can
would
see
be
what's
just
going to happen
part
here.
of it, and it would continue
It's going
on
to come
through your
apart.
entire quilt.
Now, we have one that we've already started. So the next step is to put a wide white strip behind it, and you can see here that we've got that strip. And so the first thing we're going to do with these to get it ready is to put some fusible tape along the sides. So we've just cut a piece of tape, the length of one of the angles. Use a dry iron.
Follow the directions for your fusible material. Each one of them has a little difference, temperature setting, but usually around a medium. And don't use steam because it tends to warp the fusible.
So we just cut individual pieces as we went and sewed. And you're going to peel the paper back off of this. So there's just about a half-inch sticky.
Right. This will help stabilize that bias edge and make it easy to adhere to the background fabric that you're placing under the chevron.
This one doesn't want to peel off. There we go.
The wonder of having a fusible is that you can stabilize that edge now that when you turn it over to place it onto the white fabric, the machine has a little bit of a drag over under the presser foot. That fusible will hold it in place for you so that your applique edge will look nice and crisp.
Okay, so what we're going to do is line it up, and Colleen's already made some little marks for me, and this is what you'll be doing.
The pattern will tell you approximately 4.5 inches that you're going to spread these two
right, so if I had a ruler and I put it along one of the seam lines, it would be 4.5 inches. So I need to spread that out just a tiny bit more. From here to here would be 4.5 inches. And then I could go along this line, and that's about 4.5 inches. And then we got a little dot up there. And then what I'm going to do again is just hit this with the iron.
Just warm it up so just
to
two
hold it in
layers
place.
will hold together. Because you're going to be moving this to the sewing machine, you're going to want that fused in place. Takes just a little bit to fuse it.
Just make sure we got it there. Hold it.
Now, we used a blanket stitch to do the edges, and we set our sewing machine for a stitch width of 3.5 and a stitch length of 4.5. Now this is a choice. You can play around with the settings of your sewing machine and come up with one you like. We also selected a decorative thread, so a bright blue, so you can see where the stitching is going to be.
Right. You could use an invisible thread.
Right. You could.
It's going to be hard to match since you've got so many colors, so you just have to pick one and go with it.
Exactly.
So you're going to make the right hand edge of it go right off the edge of your colored part.
It's going to drop right off the edge.
Stitch into the white there.
And that will stabilize that edge and create that decorative look you want to the edge.
And it won't really have a hard edge there because we just have that skinny little piece of fusible. You could use regular fusible that you get by the yard and just cut half-inch strips. We just used fusible that comes on a roll because it's a little quicker. Okay, so you're going to sew the length of the quilt.
You would finish out all the way around. We'll just take it out so you can see what we've done.
And there it is. Stitching on both sides.
So this is the race quilt with a little bit of extra added to it called Stitch and Slice Zigzag. Thanks for joining us today.
To see more of our videos, go to video.fonsandporter.com.